I was refreshed and felt awake. Roundabouts and signs for towns came and went through the night. As I hauled them in, the one thing I never could haul in was the dotted line in the road. It would slow when I slowed, rushing on when I rushed on, but always ready to guide me, always ready to go however fast I wanted to go. Those lines were hypnotic and mesmerising, and guided me on through Somerset and into Devon. I was ill last year with an episode of manic depression, and I wound up going to France, and that's really what the book's about. I'd been treated for manic depression for about 20 years, and I'd also had experiences of mania when travelling in India, and I'd had another experience of a spiritual awakening there, so the two seemed to be linked, the manic episode and the spiritual awakening, for me at any rate. I'm prescribed lithium carbonate, which is a commonly occurring salt, and it has the capability of bringing my mood pretty much in line with those who do not have manic depression. But without taking it, then I would experience either extreme highs or extreme lows of depression. And I stopped taking it last year because I'd had a healing, and I believed that I was completely healed and completely well. And that is the difficult thing with prophylactic medication. It crept up on me very quickly, but also I had no insight. Normally I would think that I had quite a lot of insight into my condition, but in mania, in my experience, I have no insight. So I'm not aware that what I'm doing, thinking or saying is different than other people. All I'm aware of is that people can't keep up with my racing thoughts, my rapid thought processes, which is actually part of the psychiatric symptoms, and it's called flights of ideas. So I have a number of different symptoms, but I wasn't aware of any of them. It is my understanding that certain people, when in psychosis, seem to have something in their spiritual makeup which allows them, through their illness, to manifest things that others do not as often experience. These are necessarily very challenging, distressing for friends and loved ones to deal with, and sometimes such experiences are brushed aside or even ridiculed. So on regaining stability, for fear of being ridiculed, a person may choose to keep quiet about intensely spiritual experiences. It is my hope that people will, in time, recognize that the person's reality may not be the same as their own reality, but it is nonetheless this person's reality and needs to be respected as such. It is their experience, and it does not need to be viewed as something shameful. In my opinion, it would be wonderful if, instead of acting from fear when such extreme mental disturbances occur, we were all able to get alongside the person's reality and respect it. What a change that would bring. Many people, very understandably, are fearful of mental illness. Those with the illnesses are also sometimes very frightened. I believe that the soul comes into this incarnation, and it has certain work to do and certain challenges to face. And I think that in my case, mental illness has certainly been a major challenge, which it is up to me to master or not within this incarnation. Well, I went from being in a comfortable hotel one morning to sleeping on the streets, or not actually sleeping, but walking the streets of Paris, homeless and destitute that night. I had cut up my Barclay card, I'd cut up my passport and driving license and bank cards in the belief that I would be free without bureaucracies controlling me. And the money that I had, of course, ran out, and I wound up on the streets being befriended by an Algerian man who showed me the ropes of how to survive on the streets in the cold. I was just immensely privileged, I suppose, to receive great kindness from all sorts of people. And I didn't really know why, but I just accepted it and just kept on my journey. But the day that I hadn't eaten for 3 days and I came back out from an underground car park where I'd been living and was given breakfast of half a baguette filled with ham and cheese and a cup of coffee, that to me was just the most beautiful gift I've ever been given, and it was the most beautiful meal I have ever eaten. And it was that kind of generosity that I kept receiving whilst in Paris. The baguette tasted exquisite. It looked good too, absolutely mouth-watering. The cafe owner had carved deep cuts into it, and into them he had put large slices of beautiful-looking ham and cheese. It was a feast. I was still savouring the textures and flavours as a cup of strong black coffee was brought over to me. I was being treated with such kindness, and I appreciated it very much indeed. I know that I have eaten fabulous food in my travels and at home, but there will always be a special place in my affections for that wonderful, wonderful baguette on that wonderful day in Paris, the day I started eating again. I had begged for food. I had asked for greater humility, and now I was begging for food as if it was the most natural thing for me to be doing. Indeed, when you are that hungry and without the means to feed yourself, begging is the most natural thing to do. There was a woman sitting with her back to the railings, and she was begging, and I only had one €10 note left, and so I gave it to her. But you see, I was living at that time totally in the present. I wasn't afraid that I wouldn't have enough money for the next meal. I just was living in the present, so I gave her the money. The surprising thing about all this was that I was neither looking forwards nor backwards. I was living in each moment exactly as I experienced it. I had been happy, elated even, to eat again, but once the moment was past, it was as if its power over me had completely gone. In mood, I was neither happy nor sad, neither resentful nor angry, neither expectant nor fearful, neither joyful nor downcast. I seemed to be exactly what I was, exhausted and not very well, nothing more and nothing less. The police of earlier in the day had, as soon as they had moved from central focus in my mind, simply ceased to exist within it altogether. And so it was, as I moved from one scene to the next, within this unlikely play. Things that occupied my moment were the total focus of my mind in that moment, and then when they were past, they were discarded completely, as if they no longer existed, because by then they were the past, and I was giving my full attention to the next moment, in that moment, to the present. I was in a great deal of pain walking, and I was looking for something, but I didn't know what, around a large quadrangle, and I saw signs, and one of them said médecin, which I knew meant doctors, and so I took that path, and there was a wheelchair, and I was so grateful to see it, and so grateful to take the weight off my feet. The blisters were covering a very large portion of both feet, and I went just to get help for my feet, but I wound up being admitted to hospital. And the wonderful thing was that I didn't have my E111 or whatever form it should be, because I'd probably cut it up anyway. And I was kept for 3 weeks in that hospital, and at no stage did anyone ask for money or any contact with the NHS for dealing with the bureaucracy of it. I just felt that I was given the treatment that I needed with great generosity. Dr. Jocelyn got in touch with my son at quite an early stage of my being in hospital. My son, Joe, agreed to put some money in a money transfer of some kind so that I could get a 3-day temporary passport to get back to England and a ticket for Eurostar because I had no money at all. And thanks to the efforts of Dr. Jocelyn and to Joe, that all happened very smoothly. In fact, I can't remember anything of the journey on Eurostar. I think I must have slept the whole way. And then I was just met by Harriet, my daughter, which was just such a loving and wonderful moment after such a testing and difficult experience. I had someone from the NHS who was coming regularly to see me, and one day she asked me if I would find it helpful to go to creative writing classes at a place called the Balsam Centre in Wincanton. And I said yes, and really didn't think much more of it. And then a couple of visits later, she said there was a place for me. I suppose I describe it as the writing as being a way of healing, of exorcising trauma and pain, which may not have come out even in talking therapies, I don't know. But I was very blessed in that I went along to the creative writing classes, and much to my surprise, there was no one else there. No other students, I mean. There was just my tutor. And so it was one-to-one. And so I was very privileged to be able to write and read the chapters 1 week at a time to Ella, my tutor. And so I think the process of writing and of reading started to really have a profound effect on my health. During the writing of it, I wondered whether it might be possible to get it published. I wondered whether it would be useful in any way for other people with mental health problems or for their families, or even for mental health professionals, to have an insight into a recent episode of mania. And I started to become aware of other people who'd been published and the names of their publishers, etc. And I approached quite a few publishers, and I got some offers of publication, but some of the publishers who offered me contracts wanted money from me. Well, I wasn't going to go down that route, partly because I didn't have any money anyway. But so I kept going until I contacted a publisher called Chipmunker Publishing, and I contacted Jason Pegler, who's its chief executive officer, and he said that he would read the book by a certain date. I think it was the day after the general election, and he got back to me on that date, and he said that he liked it and would like to support it. At the moment it's only published as an e-book, and so it would be via the direct link. But it will be published as a paperback in about 6 months, so I would say February to March next year it'll be out as a paperback published by Chipmunker Publishing.